The unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect truth is seldom met with, even in 100,000 myriad kalpas. Now we can see and hear it, we can remember and accept it. I vow to make the Buddha's truth one with myself. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha. Thank you all for coming, and thank you, Reverend Master Mayon, for inviting me to give the Dharma talk. It's a special blessing, since this is our yearly memorial for Reverend Master Jiyu. And there are, if I'm doing my arithmetic correctly, there are 10 of us, half of the community, that were ordained by Reverend Master Jiyu. And I was fortunate enough to be one of them, and still am. So here we are, and I want to talk a little bit about some things that I learned when I was with Reverend Master Jiyu, and I'm almost embarrassed to say that I learned more since then than I did then, but I knew everything then, and now I know that I don't know everything, so I can still learn a little bit. And thank you for all the monks that are here for helping me stay here all these years. What would I do if I were out in the world? I have no idea. When I was asked to do this talk, I was reading a book by Catherine Thanis, The Truth of This Life, Zen Teachings on Loving the World as It Is. I thought that was a challenge in itself. And one of her chapters is entitled, Just This Is It. And when I think about how I would summarize the teaching that I received from Reverend Master Jiyu during those 6 years that I was with her before her death, and what I've learned now, I would say, just this is it. Just this is it. So that's what I'm going to talk about. Just this is it. So I still had my registered nurse license when I came here, and I was asked to keep it so that if needed, it would be helpful, and I did that. So that was basically my most recent background, and I had been a journalist before that and various other things. And so, and this is pointing at the essence of what I learned. So criticism and judgment were essential parts of my profession, and I was getting paid to be critical and to make judgments. And of course I brought that with me, not knowing that, and especially as a postulant and a novice, she wasn't going to ask me for my criticism and my judgment. She was going to ask me for my profession, my expertise. But I did learn a few things while I was with her. And one of the things I learned was to let go of my, quote, professionalism, and to let go of my criticism and judgment. And although I learned that I needed to let go of that, that doesn't in any way indicate that I was able to. And I was reminded this morning when we were singing the Roaring Tigris, and it says, Master and disciple training day by day, hers is the heart that ever seeks the way. At ease, not insisting, quietly she sat, wearing the kesa, spreading wide her mat. And one of the things that impressed me during those 6 years as she became more ill and more disabled, that even though she wasn't wearing the kesa and spreading her mat, she was still doing her practice every single day. And the line that struck with me was, at ease, not insisting, quietly she sat. So she would ask me to find some medical information or to talk with Dr. Jim Parker or Beth Gong or Alan Charles or one of her medical people about something. And I would talk to them and I would get all the information, and on the way to give it to her, of course, as I was accustomed to, I would make up my mind about what she should do. So I would sit down and I would give her all that information, and she would say thank you. And I would say something to the effect, well, do you think it would be good if we did such and such? And she said, well, let me think about it. And of course, I wanted to make decisions, and I wanted to make decisions quickly so we could get on with it. And I would say, well, don't you think it would be good if, and after I'd done that a few times, I remember this very well, she said, Lass, don't insist. And I can remember sitting there saying, I'm not insisting. And she'd say, yes, you are. And I'd say, no, I'm not. And she said, yes, you are. And I'd say, no, I'm not. And she finally did a sigh and said, well, Lass, go away and think about it for a little bit. So I'd go away, and of course I'd think about what decision she should make. I wouldn't think about the fact that I'd been insisting, because I knew I wasn't insisting. I was just doing what needed to be done. I also learned a little about making judgments in my own mind. That wonderful chest that's on the altar, she purchased during the time I was there. It's all lotus blossoms, and it's just beautiful. And she purchased it from one of those, what I consider mundane catalogs. It wasn't L.L. Bean, it wasn't Land's End, it wasn't this, it wasn't that. But remember, this was in the early 90s. We didn't have internet. And so and here in the monastery, we also didn't want to go out shopping every day. So we had catalogs. We had stacks of catalogs. And she would sit there and she would look through the catalog. And I would think, what in the world can she be looking for in that sort of catalog? And I'm making all these judgments. That's where she got that beautiful lotus chest from, was one of those catalogs, because she'd look through them and she'd find something that she'd been wanting for a long time, or that would be useful for the monastery. And I would never have even thought that she could find something like that in those catalogs. But in spite of all those things, I continued to this day with my criticism and my judgment, but at least I recognize it now. You see, I recognize it now. I also learned a few things about time, which you would have thought I would have learned in my professional life. But one was be on time. If you're supposed to be there at 6:30 in the morning, get there a few minutes before 6:30 in the morning. Another thing I learned about time was there were times when she was very insistent about time, and times where it really didn't matter. And one of the times that she was insistent about time, of course she had no way of knowing it, she was in the den where Master Daisui and I would be in the kitchen waiting for her to wake up. And once she woke up, I would start her tea water, and then I would steep her tea for 4 minutes, no more and no less, 4 minutes. And at first I would bring the tea in and she would look at me with a question, and I said, 4 minutes. And she would smile and have her morning cup of tea. But I also learned some don'ts about time, which is when you're sitting there with other monks and your master is talking, we'd be in her den early in the morning, sorting out what needed to be done. Don't look at your watch. Because I would do that because I had all these things to do and time was getting on. And then one time, with her Master Daisui there, I don't remember whether her Master Man was there, but other senior monks were there. And she stopped what she was saying and she looked at me and she said, Lass, do you have somewhere to go or somewhere you need to be? And I thought, oh, she's noticing everything, even though she's talking to people. So those are some of the practical things that I learned about. But all in all, what I learned was that it's practice that counts. And it was her practice that I remember most, day in and day out, her everyday life, as she got more and more ill and less able to do things. It was still her monastic practice. And I remember her gratitude. I remember her kindness. I remember her sense of humor. I remember starting to walk into the study one day, and it sounded to me that she was singing. And so later on, I asked Reverend Master Daisui, and he said, "Oh, they're the body ballads from the London music halls," because she was a musician, and she knew all this, and she would remember them, and she would, sit there singing. And of course, I thought, a Zen master singing music hall body ballads? But, that's what she remembered, and that's what she did. So, and she always made gasho and said thank you, no matter how late it was at night, no matter what kinds of procedures we had to do later on. The first summer that I was with her was when she had first been diagnosed with diabetes, and we were out at Fugen Hermitage, and I was teaching other monks how to give her insulin. And then it seemed like the Fugen Hermitage was a little far if we actually needed medical assistance. So the next 2 summers we spent at Brookings, which was really wonderful, beautiful views of the Pacific Ocean. I can remember wild turkeys walking across the front lawn. And then, I guess we were down at Berkeley for one summer. And so I had an opportunity to see her in very different situations and to be with her in situations that were stressful for her, to say the least, because it's not her own place, it's not her own house. But I'm grateful for all the time that I spent with her, for the teaching that I got from her and from the senior monks. And of course, everyone was a senior monk to me. I had just finished my head novice term when I went to be with her as her nurse chaplain. And since then, I have learned a few other things from her, things that I wasn't quite able to get then. So I want to talk with you about a few of the teachings that I found and am finding particularly relevant. And I feel that the teachings for me are encapsulated in the verse that's on the south side of the stupa, and I'll read it to you. If life comes, there is only life. If death comes, there is only death. All acceptance is the key that unlocks the gateless gate. Within this place, there is no suffering, there is no coming, no going, no ceasing, no way. There is only endless training, appearing here, disappearing there, going in and out, always becoming Buddha. And when I read that over, I thought, those first 2 lines, if life comes, there is only life. If death comes, there is only death. That's what her chapter 7 in Roar of the Tigris, Volume 2, is all about. And the title of that chapter is Living Fully, Dying Fully. Live fully, die fully. And this is what she says. in that chapter. The literal translation of Zenki. Now, Zenki is the title. She was giving talks on Dogen's Shobogenzo. She was giving them in the meditation hall. And this is the lecture on Zenki, Zenki, ever functioning, never dormant. The literal translation of Zenki is the activity of Zen, or you might also say the activity of meditation. And it refers to Buddha nature, true nature, or whatever Dogen calls true self. To thoroughly explore this, says Dogen, is to find the answer to the great problem of how to fully accept our life and how to fully accept our death. Because when life comes, death follows. And this is what she quotes from Dogen. When one thoroughly examines what the great way of the Buddhas is, it is liberation from delusion and letting one's true self manifest to the full. For some, this liberation from delusion means that life liberates us from life, and death liberates us from death. Therefore, both our getting out of birth and death and our entering birth and death are the great way. When thoroughly explored, both our laying birth and death aside and our going beyond birth and death to the other shore are the great way when thoroughly explored. And her commentary on that is, this passage is quite straightforward, but be careful of the phrase, getting out of birth and death. You cannot get out of life. And now that you're in life, you surely as heck can't get out of death. What you can do is find a third position where they don't get in the way of what truly matters and where one can enjoy both fully. Thus, when I'm alive, I'm fully alive. And when I'm dead, I'm fully dead. There is to simultaneously get out of and enter, to lay aside and go beyond both life and death by living in the non-substantial liberated essence of all time. And the essence for us is our practice. It's our day-to-day practice of meditation and precepts. The next sentence in the stupa verse is, all acceptance is the key that unlocks the gateless gate. Within this place there is no suffering, no coming, no going, no ceasing, no way. And this, I think, is what she talks about in chapter 2 of Roar of the Tigris, volume 2. And the chapter is called All is One and All is Different. And it's from the lecture in the Shobogenzo on Genjo Koan, which she translates, Shinmar Hubert translated as the spiritual question as it manifests before your very eyes. And what she says is, when there is Buddhism, there is diversification. All things are seen to be unique in their differences. When you find that which is true, none of these things exist. Thus, the way of the Buddha includes and also transcends both unity and individuality, which I have sometimes expressed as all is one and all is different. Do not remain forever within dualistic individuality, for you will never know the unity. And do not try to stay within the unity, for you will not know the fullness of truth. Know that you must go beyond both. too often we look down upon the difference and we idolize the unity, when what we are speaking of in this chapter lies beyond both of them, and yet it embraces both of them. We may call it the truth, we may call it immaculacy, we may call it that which we know within ourselves, but all of these names are wrong. All is one, yes, and you may see it within the all is different. So when I sit with that commentary, it changes how I see things, because I can realize that I can only see things from this mind and body of Scholastica, unless I'm willing to say what she often said was, I could be wrong. Maybe the way I'm seeing this is not actually the way it is. Maybe I'm just seeing it with those opinions that I have carried around with me for many, many years. And I'm sorry to say, I still have a number of them, but they're special to me. They're my opinions. And what I need to do when I look at things and listen to things and see things is say, maybe they're different from what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing and what I'm taking the time to say, let me look at this again. So the last two, so those words have made a lot of difference to me. And the last two sentences, verses, is, there is only endless training, appearing here, disappearing there, going in and out, always becoming Buddha. And I have to tell you that when I started preparing this talk and sitting and reflecting on it, always becoming Buddha meant always becoming whoever and whatever Buddha is. But when I looked a little further, and I looked in chapter 11 of Roar of the Tigris, Volume 2, there's a chapter in there called Always Becoming Buddha. And by the time I had read it, my interpretation of always becoming Buddha had changed. This is chapter 11 in Roar 2. What are the activities of a Buddha? This is her commentary. What is the practice of a Buddha? How do you practice when you are Buddha? Remembering, of course, that one is Buddha at all times. What does it mean to be a Buddha doing one's practice? We saw in the previous chapter that the practice of the Buddha ancestors is both flowing and unending. Is this also true of the practice of Buddhas in this present day? This chapter makes clear that it is, and she's referring to Genjo Koan. It also explains something which I have often been asked about regarding the translation which I did of the Scripture of Great Wisdom, or the Heart Sutra. As a result of much discussion and study with my master, Koho Zenji, I changed the final lines, which are normally translated as gone, gone, gone on beyond, gone to the other shore. And we changed it to going, going, going on beyond, and always going on, always becoming Buddha. One of the points which Dogen makes in this chapter, or the everyday behavior of a Buddha doing the practice, is that the practice of the Buddhas is ongoing and endless. This being so, Koho Zenji and I decided to translate the sutra using the terms going and always becoming Buddha, which is not quite as perfect as it could be, but it was the nearest we could get. We had a lot of discussions about what it is. If we had translated it as always practicing Buddha, not being Buddha, but always practicing Buddha, it might have been a little clearer, but it also might not have been understood, except from the point of someone who has gone a lot more deeply into meditation than the average person who comes to ceremonies in a Buddhist temple. But practicing Buddha, as you will see from this chapter, is really what the scripture of great wisdom is talking about. All Buddhas, without exception, make full use of their everyday behavior for their practice. And this is meant, and this is what is meant by always becoming Buddha. It's always doing our practice. It's always exhibiting the precepts. It's always being in meditation. So practice is simply our everyday life, whatever that may be. And it is our everyday life, our practice, that is becoming Buddha. And within becoming Buddha is the awareness and actualization of all is one and all is different. So what do these verses tell us? What did these verses tell me? That this moment is all I have. This very teeny, tiny moment, wherever I am, whenever, whatever state of mind and body that I find myself in, whatever state of mind and body you find yourself in, is our practice of Buddha. And the phrase that I liked was, just this is it. And it came from the book by Catherine Thanis, and I'll read you one paragraph from here. Even though our minds and body may insist on something else, ordinary is not a heretical move away, or ordination, is not a move away from the shared ground of being. So in this regard, we as monks and you as laity are all the same. We are all one and we are all different. This is a new condition for our communities to work with. Let's see what our minds make of it. Searching for the truth, you must completely withdraw from the invisible pounding and weaving of your ingrained ideas. I particularly like that. You must completely withdraw from the invisible pounding and weaving of your ingrained ideas. If you want to be free of this invisible turmoil, you must know it completely, observing it with a calm mind. We have a ringside seat at this practice. Another Zen ancestor put it this way: don't keep searching for the truth. Just let go of your opinions. Keep in mind that this is it. And in closing, I want to mention that although we I think Roar 2 is no longer in publication, in print, but you can find it on the OBC website as a PDF, and you can download it. And the other thing that you can find on the OBC Journal website are 2 issues of the journal that I recommend, and I used both of them in preparing this talk. One is the 10th anniversary issue of the journal. It was autumn of 2006. Has lots of nice photographs, biography of Reverend Master Jiyu, and 2 articles by her. The Practice of Zen, which she wrote in 1968, and First Founders, which she wrote in 1986. And the other one was the 20th anniversary issue, which was summer-autumn of 2016, and it has some really beautiful photographs in it, and again, some one photograph when she was over at Soto, and it has wonderful articles in it, and they're both available online on the OBC Journal website. So thank you for coming to celebrate this wonderful day. In 2 years, we'll be celebrating the 30th anniversary of her death. Thank you all so much for being here. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha.